Hi. So I have another film review here, and it's a twofer this time. I saw The Wolfman and Nosferatu as a double feature. Not the classics, of course. It's the modern remakes that are made here in the year 2025 because, like, it's the future. And yeah, Nosferatu, a remake 100 years in the making. It pretty much is 100 years old, that film, from the silent era. But it's been remade, and so has The Wolfman, which was in the 1940s. So yeah, it's everything old is new again, as they say. Yep. It wasn't like any sort of special deal. I just happened to be in the Cineplex at the time, the movie theater, and one was playing mere minutes away from the other, so I went to one and then the other. And I gotta say, I am quite pleased with both of them. This review is going to have some spoilers for both films, but that's how it is. Just to let you know, I'm drinking more of this stuff. You remember this, the Fanta Halloween Special Edition Beetlejuice drink. It's good, but they still keep them in stores even after all this time. Halloween is long since over, but you wouldn't think so with considering the movies that are in theaters. Here we are in January, and yet all the horror movies are out. There's Vampires, Nosferatu, there's The Wolfman. I mean, yeah, it's great stuff. This is more Halloween than the actual Halloween I had previous year when nobody bothered showing up to our house, as usual. But yeah. So, gotta say, it's a very, it is very much modernized, but both of these stories get at the source material of what they used to be. Wolfman, the concept of becoming a werewolf. A very nice guy who's, trying to do good and trying to be a compassionate person, but he gets bit by a werewolf, and that werewolf it's a curse inside of him, and it's a disease, and it's gonna both physically and psychologically change the person. That's the whole horror of it all, both psychological horror and body horror. You see, every time like some part of his body gets broken off or injured and such, it heals back in a more wolf-like form. So he's like, and that's kind of the grotesqueness of this version. It's more grotesque. It's not just he goes back and forth between human every night or every full moon or anything like that. It's more like a disease, a lot like rabies, I should think. Like once he gets transformed, he's gonna be stuck that way, and he's gonna be crazy and a wild feral beast with no sense of self-control and such. And yeah, and much like the previous time when the Wolfman movie was remade, it's still this odd father and son sort of conflict, like where he has this estranged relationship to his father because there's been some sort of conflict and some sort of issue. And, I will remind you, spoilers, because spoilers are coming up. So it takes place in America, in Oregon, way out in the boonies, where it's all countryside and untapped with farmland, and lots of people hunt for a living. And a father and son are, a hunter family. He seemed like a pretty young guy, a very young kid to be going out hunting with an actual firearm, I should think. And I should think that deer they were hunting is a bit too young, too. I mean, come on. What are you going to do? Get a miniature little pelt with all this white speckles on it? The spots? That denote that it's a juvenile deer? I was actually reading up a bit on taxidermy, and the skin and fur of the animal is real, but not the innards and bones, apparently. Apparently it's like just a wax sculpture that they just put skin onto is how taxidermy works, supposedly. I was just vaguely glimpsing at this documentary. Apparently, when they do taxidermy for fish and such, it's not even the real flesh. It's literally just a sculpture they made. Oh, man. Taxidermy. Interesting profession. Yeah. Good drink. Now, of course, they go out hunting, and they go out hunting in the woods, and of course, there's got to be a werewolf out there. And when that werewolf bites people, they'll infect them. And apparently, the father of that young man, he was in some sort of like hunters group or militias group, one that actually has their own flag and everything, and ham radio communications and whatnot. And he's like, and I'm thinking, is this like the World of Darkness sort of setting? Like Hunter the Vigil or Werewolf the Apocalypse, where werewolves and werewolf hunters are both real in this world, and they operate in their own secret society who just, they got to fight each other and hunt each other, because, that's what horror characters do. And he's like, he's in the know about it. He knows all about werewolves because he's in some sort of militia group. Like, they even have their own flag with a skull and whatnot. Like, this all seems very official. You'd think this would be some sort of lore that would come up, but no, actually it doesn't. Because it cuts to 30 years later, where the little boy's a full-grown man and a father with his own daughter and has a wife, and they're living in the big city. A big grubby city with lots of homeless people all over the place, just like where I live. Yeah. And, he's trying to be a good father. He's like trying to protect his daughter. He's like, he doesn't want to end up too harsh like his father was to him, but, he's got to protect his kids, and that's the rules he sets in motion because, good father. And, but, he gets the family will in the mail, and he's like, oh crap, my dad's dead. I guess we should go over to see his estate, which I moved away from, and sort things out. And like, way out in the countryside, boonies and such. And like, well, on the other hand, we have a free house way out in the countryside. It might be fun. Like, because I think he did have an estranged relationship to his father because, he was a bit too harsh. Maybe it was like, it's how it was at the time, and it also is a very reasonable understanding if you're living in werewolf country. But, that's it. And he's meeting his old-timey neighbors that they used to be friends and they were kids, but of course he moved out as soon as he got of age, so they haven't seen each other in years. He's like, hi, I'm a hunter now. I live out in the woods. And the father guy's like, oh, great, have you met my wife and kid? And they're like, oh, great. And they swerve over in the truck, and they're like, oh, shit, there's somebody on the road. Like, I don't even know how that big, heavy truck got suspended up in the trees when it crashed off the hill, but it did. It rolled off a hill. It kept rolling around and rolling until it crashed and suspended into the trees. This is just like that scene in Jurassic Park where the Jeep goes off a cliff and gets stuck in the trees, and maybe it's at an awkward angle and such, and people need to get out of there, but there's monsters roaming around them woods, and that's no good. Supposedly this film is from the same director as The Invisible Man, which was also a very good movie, of Universal property, but, another modernized remake, and a very good remake, I should say. If only they had used that film as the starting foundation for a new Universal horror thing, the Dark Universe, as they say, because apparently Universal Studios wanted to imitate, I'm getting a bit distracted. Someone's driving their car real close to me, surprisingly. Universal Studios. They were the ones who kind of did invent the game of shared universes and multi-film crossovers and such, not just sequels, but films interconnected in the same universe. Like, Dracula meets the Wolfman, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, all the Universal horror monsters. They're all in there. It's a big old monster mash. And like, very Halloween themed. And like, yeah, Universal Studios, Universal Pictures, they made this sort of concept, like pioneering it in the 1930s and 40s, long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe was ever a thing. And, now they're trying to play catch up again with the concept of the Dark Universe, which is already a flop. Like, I didn't see any advertising like that on neither this film nor The Invisible Man, the remake. So I'm like, well, I guess you don't need the official branding, but I do think the films that they've made now are of high quality. Very good modernized remakes. Because like I said before, this version of the Wolfman, they really get into the physical and psychological aspect of it. It is very much like a disease. It starts out as just a cut on his arm, but then it keeps going and going. The cut doesn't heal. It just gets more rotten and disgusting. And his psychologicalness, his mind, is messing up all over. He can't understand other people when they speak. He can't barely recognize human beings as actual people when he looks at them. Everything's distorted, but his senses are all at super high performance, like a superhuman beast. He could actually hear a spider crawling around with every individual leg moving, even though it's way up in the other room. And he's like, he can hear these things. He's got superhuman powers now. That's what it's like to be a werewolf. And you go insane, and you can't talk to people, and you look diseased. Your teeth fall out, your nails fall out, your hair falls out. Kind of ironic for a werewolf when I think about it. But yeah, it looks real sickly. And, later on in the film, if he gets a leg chopped off, it will slowly heal back, but I don't know. Or maybe it's just an excuse for him to be walking on all fours, which he will have no trouble with, I'm just saying. But yeah, jump scares and lots of spooky things out in the woods, because, it's a horror movie, and it's got werewolf in it. Oh, yeah. The family, that they've in this terrible car crash. The werewolf, it bites the guy, it scratches him, and now he's infected, and he's slowly becoming diseased over time. The family's stuck in there, and I gotta say, that was the longest night I've ever seen in film, I should think. Like, it's almost being shot in real time, almost. Like, you'd think with these films there'd be a kind of montage of time passing and such, but no, that was not the case. It basically was one whole night they were there. Like, I would think that come dawn, everything would chill out, and at the very least, even if the werewolves do come out at daytime, you could at least see them coming, because it's not pitch black nighttime. And no, this is basically all in one night. This whole event happens. So that means his werewolf transformation is very quick, I should think. And he's like, they're all stuck in this house with no cell phone reception, barely any functional electricity. Got to board up all the doors and windows because the werewolf wants to come in, a monster that's hunting them in the woods. And they're like, oh shit, it's roaming around. It's horrifying to look at. They can't, the cliches. There's a jump scare where the big scary thing comes out at them, and they try to get the old pickup truck running. They got to hotwire it and charge up its batteries, and like, oh man, you don't have time for this. And of course the monster keeps chasing them, and you know what? I don't know, guys. Plastic roofs, like, all that plastic roofs they use in gardens, like what's it called? Greenhouses and such, like to like keep their plant life enclosed or something. Like, I don't know about that, guys. I don't think that plastic is strong enough to support any human body. It's just not strong enough for that kind of weight, but there it is, apparently. And of course, monsters, like, they try to climb up on top of the greenhouse, and the monster wants to claw at them, and I'm pretty sure it could easily jump up there. If people could climb up on the roof, I think the monster could climb up it even easier, I should think. But there's the werewolf, and they got to do something about that werewolf because it's dangerous. And yet they now have, the family has a werewolf of their own on their side because the father is slowly turning into one, and he can fight the other one. Like, okay, the fresh off the boat new guy in town is gonna try and beat the OG werewolf. I don't know about this, you guys, but they put up a good fight. They do, and big spoilers coming up in a minute. The family, they're shocked and appalled by the corpse of the werewolf, but they're like, oh shit, I recognize that tattoo. And he figures out, oh shit, that was my dad. So he says, the father. And he's like, oh crap, so he didn't really die. He got infected and turned into a werewolf the whole time. And oh no. And you know, just like this whole drama between father and son werewolf fighting each other, it happened again in the remake. In the previous remake. Okay, I guess this is a reoccurring theme here. But yeah, the werewolf is like this father guy. He's turning into a werewolf, and he's so distraught. He's like, "Oh my goodness, how could this happen? Oh no, and the same thing's gonna happen to me. I'm gonna go crazy and mad. Oh no, what am I gonna do?" And he's like, "Oh shit." The family's like, "Okay, we gotta get out of here." And then it's all that's left is the mother and daughter, and they got the gun, and he's like, "Okay, you know what? Just put me out of my misery," says the werewolf. I'm like, okay, bang. I guess there's not going to be any sequel, but it is a big countryside. Who knows how many werewolves are out there? Probably more than just the two, I should think. No sequels for you. Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, my. Well, I do. Moving on from werewolves to vampires, we have Nosferatu. Now, I did watch the original from 1920s and such. It was a silent film in black and white, needless to say. And you know, I know it's a bit much for modern audiences to tolerate something like that. And to not just black and white, but also a silent film, that's a bit of a chore to get through. You got to read as well as watch. So, yeah, not recommended for everyone, but this remake, of course, is in full color, although muted color, because, you know, it's a dark, gritty horror film. But yeah, this remake, it's full color, full sound. And to understand the story of Nosferatu, what I understand of it is that it's kind of like a bootleg of Dracula, in a way. The people who made it, the production team, they didn't actually have the rights to the story, Dracula, from Bram Stoker's estate. So what they did is essentially ripped it off and made it their own sort of story, just changing all the names of the characters. It's not Count Dracula, it's Count Orlok. And, you know, it's, there's no Van Helsing, there's no Nina Harker, there's no Jonathan Harker, there's no Renfield, but many of the reoccurring elements happen. It's sort of like a remix of the story, and so you could think of it as such. Not just changing the character names, but also the location, because rather than being set in England, it's set in Germany. And yeah, it's old-timey gaslit lamp sort of place with gaslit lamps and you know, old-timey sailing ships and people in their fancy old-timey outfits and top hats and such. Very nice looking, very aesthetic, pleasing. And yeah, Nosferatu. Uh, I very much doubt this one's related to World of Darkness and Vampire the Masquerade, but you know, there is the Nosferatu clan within that role playing game. Yeah, they are the hideous ones, the designated ones that were malformed and hideous to behold. You look at it and you know it's a vampire immediately. Therefore, they have a very difficult time partaking in the masquerade. Yeah. You can tell it's a vampire just by looking at it. That's the kind of creatures they are. But as for the film Nosferatu, very similar. Same sort of idea that was going on at the time, like an imitation of Dracula. And very much unlawful, like an unauthorized imitation of Dracula. Supposedly, there was like some sort of like the estate of Bram Stoker took the filmmakers to court and demanded that this was too much of a copyright infringement, and they'd actually won the case and insisted that the court order that all the copies of it be destroyed. So for a time, this was thought to be a lost film. But people did recover it and restore it. And, you know, I did get to see it online. Because, you know, public domain and whatnot. It's Nosferatu, the silent film. And it was okay. It definitely had its themes to it. Nosferatu, well, this new movie, it does have lots of callbacks to that sort of film. That whole thing where the vampires got these long hands that shadows of it all stretch out and such, and he goes hunting around for people and victims, and he's got this hideous form to him. He's like all corpse-like and dead, and yet he's walking around and he's creepy. And yeah, this modern one, it does also goes full on like mysticism with Dracula and such. What to say about this? There's the controversy. I'm gonna say it. The gypsy question. Some of you don't even like it when I say that word, and I don't say it with malintent or ill intent or anything like that. Like, guys, that's been the name for them for like forever. You know. It's, to my understanding, it was only until, I mean, the chances are the people themselves have been complaining about the usage of the term and would prefer the term Romani or something like that, or Roma people or something, but they don't like being called that. I should think, and from what I told, like you know. It'd be the politically correct thing to call them that rather than gypsies. But the thing is, this issue really came to a boiling point, I feel, in the 2010s when it became an actual discussed issue. And I'm like, you know, chances are I wouldn't even be able to recognize one when I see one. I'm going to say it. I have the same issue I have with indigenous people, like here in North America. Like, I can't actually recognize them when I see them. Like, my understanding of them for the cultural stuff, a lot of it's more like the past stuff, like with old-timey like outfits, tribes and such, and therefore I wouldn't actually recognize one when I see one. It's simple as. I'm so, like, how could I even possibly discriminate against a person if I don't even recognize them when I see them? So I really feel that's not like something I'm going to do or even consider doing or even have the possibility of doing. It's wrong, and I'm not doing any of that. But the same issue comes back to the Roma people, and I'm thinking I wouldn't even be able to recognize one of them if I saw them in real life. Chances are I just interpret them as some white person. Like, that really is just what I would conclude if I met them and looked at them, unless they told me otherwise, because all the iconography we associate with them is the old-timey stuff, like from, back in the days, like, horror films of Dracula and such. and, Transylvanian peoples and such. Like, the old cliches where they dance around next to their wagon carts and such, and they travel from place to place. And I'm like, that's the old-timey aesthetic, and I kind of doubt modern people are doing any of that unless they wanted to go way back traditional or something. So, yeah. Simply put, I don't have any ill intent when I say the term gypsy, but you have to understand all the depictions I've seen of them are rather sympathetic and not really a derogatory thing at all, from what I've seen, like, more often than not. First of all, Hunchback of Notre Dame, a very sympathetic depiction of them as, being an unfairly persecuted minority. Horror films, well, they're the ones who are educated on the horror monsters and vampires and such. They're in the know about how to deal with vampires and werewolves and things. That's what they know about. So, a very wise depiction of them. So I don't think that's unflattering at all. So here's the thing. Is this, how often does this even happen in North America? Because, like I said before, I wouldn't recognize them if I saw them. So I'm thinking, it's really in Europe when the people do the most complaining about these things I've found. Perhaps you've seen before this meme where Europeans are always lambasting and complaining about America and how they, have race issues and race relation issues between white Americans and black Americans. But the moment a European sees a gypsy and they're like, oh, now the narrative slipped all of a sudden. Now it's not about being tolerant. Now they do want to be, now they do have a grape. Now they're the ones having some trouble getting along with their neighbors. Like, okay. I think we should all get along and be peaceful with one another. That's what I feel. Like, we should try our best to do that, I feel. But, you remember this one YouTube review person, this quite a character, this cartoon reviewer called Lily Pete? I think that's her name. Quite a character, quite a personality, let's put it positively to say that. All kinds of controversy, very very complaining, very vitriolic, very angry at other people all the time, always complaining about something. She even went to such an extent to virtue signal that she edited together the scenes from Hunchback of Notre Dame, a Disney cartoon production, and used the censor beep on every instance of the word gypsy. And I'm like, that's really going too far. It's a freaking Disney film, and that's not even swearing, but you're treating it like it's intolerable. That's some leftist virtue signaling right there, I gotta tell you. Oh, my. So, yeah. Of course, the term gypsy is used in this film, and yeah, just like in the story, he goes way out east to the Transylvanian place, which is inhabited by gypsies and such, and they got all their, strange customs, like living in wagon carts, and their big tambourine dance, and their slappy dance, where he's like, oh, do. He's just, okay. Well, I think this is all a nice, culturally enriching sort of get-together. And the inn owner is like, you cut that out right now. Get out of here. I'm trying to run a business here. Good evening, sir. I've come to speak to the owner of the castle over there to inquire about business. Don't you speak of that castle. Oh, it is the shadow of death over there. Oh, I tell you, it's cursed. And he's like, okay. Well, I am getting a bit ahead of ourselves with the story, but yeah. You'll know this is a modern remake of it, because it's got quite a bit more nudity than you would see in the 1920s, I should think. Yeah. Lots of blood and guts and boobs. Actually, not much boobs. I gotta tell you, the women are kind of flat-chested over there. Never mind. Yeah. So, yeah, it's the basically the same sort of story as Dracula, but, like with the file numbers, the serial numbers filed off, the bootleg version of the story, if you will, where somewhere in Germany, there's the estate sort of holdings company, the land owners and such, and they're like, this eccentric count wants to purchase land in our city, certainly, and if you go ahead and do this business, if you secure the buyout and paperwork, you will get a big promotion here at this company, sir. And he's like, oh boy, I can't wait to tell my wife about this. And this crazy old man who's running the law firm, Mr. Knock, he's called. He's got like something messed up on his head. Like he's got this malformity. Like, sir, just wipe that off. And he's like, even when he's like just a normal guy talking around in his business, he comes off as a little bit strange and weird. And you start seeing clues that things aren't quite right. He's got like a few strange occult imagery seals he keeps in his office. And I'm like, what's with that about? He's like, okay, I'm off to go see Count Dracula, or I should say Count Orlok. Oop-de-doop-de-doo. I gotta tell my wife about this, and I gotta go for a big long trip. And she's like, I don't feel good about this, says the lady. She's like, I've had these terrible nightmares all my life and all those things, and I'm all weirdy and such. She's like, ma'am, I love you, but you're just kind of weird, It's like, okay. The family, they get together with the other rich family, and they're like, oh, let's just have Christmas Eve here together. We're all a big happy family here. And he's like, off we go to meet the vampire. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. He rides off on his horsey into eastern lands with all sorts of gypsy folk, and he goes into the inn, and it's full of old people who are like, oh, you shouldn't be here, and you shouldn't ever talk about that castle. It's haunted and cursed and such. And there's a recurring theme in this movie where characters keep having nightmares, and they wake up from the nightmares, but the nightmares are kind of probably real because, like, there's signs that things actually did happen. Like, this guy, the main character guy, he's like a stand-in for Jonathan Harker, and he's like, I'm gonna go out and see what all this fuss is about. Like, why are they parading around that naked woman on a horse? And he's like, what are the gypsies doing? And they're like, let's just dig up this corpsey body thing and try and kill it. And like, what's the naked lady for? Well, she's a sacrifice to the devil. Well, I could think of better things I could do with her. What are you doing there? And like, surely we must conduct this ritual to prevent that evil demon. That lady on the horse is just bait. And like, okay, I think this is all kind of gross. I think you should stop this. Like, why don't you wake up? And he wakes up from the dream. Ah, crap, it was all just a dream. But my shoes, they're still muddy. It's as if it really did happen. I was out there in the woods. And he keeps on walking the next day to the forest, through the forest and over the mountains and such. He's like, I wonder where everybody is. And he's like, here's this really weird road that is owned by the spooky old count. And like, sir, why are you standing in the middle of the road? You'll get trampled by those horses. I'm like, not if the cart turns at a right angle, 90 degrees completely. Like, huh? How did it do that? Was it magic or something? Like, okay. And much like the story of Count Dracula, the guy, he's being taken up in his cart, and he goes up to the castle, and it's spooky and weird, and everything's off-putting, like he's being hypnotized or something. And there is the Count. He looks like a corpse that's standing up and awkwardly disappearing from scene to scene. And like, they say all these complaints I heard about the Francis Ford Coppola version of the film, the remake in the 90s, like, They say that was weird and over the top, but I kind of like it though. Certainly, I like that version of the story, and also the Frankenstein movie from the '90s. That doesn't get enough love as it should. It really isn't that bad, you guys. You shouldn't complain about it. I liked it. But yeah, this scene with Nosferatu, it's a bit more subtle and a lot more creepy. Because this guy, he really does look like a corpse, like a lot of the time. And, oh man, this Nosferatu, Count Orlok. Oh, he's a creepy guy, but he does resemble Vlad Dracula a bit more closely, because he actually keeps the mustache like he actually did in real history. He's not some bald, creepy guy with pointy ears and a pointy nose and pointy fingers. But yeah, he's like, and he has all these like occult symbols and such. He's like, why don't you sign this document here? It is for your wife's soul. I'm like, huh? Why would I have to do that? Because I'll give you lots of gold. He drops the sack of coins. Okay. Oh, I'll sign away. Sign. I sure hope I'm not hypnotized. I mean, you can't just tell a hypnotized person to sign a contract. That can't be legal. Well, I shall judge that, says the vampire. Here is your 30 pieces of silver. But you said it was gold. Oh, whatever. And, spooky stuff ensues where he starts drinking up the blood. And they see the guy he's going over in the spooky castle. He's creeping around and he's like, aha, a coffin with a vampire in it. All I have to do is leave this conveniently placed pickaxe here and I can stab it right through his heart. He's like, I don't think so, says the vampire as he reanimates and grabs at him. He's like, wolves attack. He's like, oh shit. There's spooky stuff like that. And previously, we know that Mr. Knock of the law firm is not on the level because he's conducting some sort of rituals with pentagram circles and occult things in the nude. And he's like, the master will help me out here. He's going to make me immortal. Because I guess Mr. Knock is actually the equivalent of Renfield for some reason. That's kind of weird. How did he go insane and become loyal to the Count if they didn't really meet before? I guess, or whatever. But yeah, it's like I said before, this is kind of a remix of the story of Dracula. Yeah, because I guess Mr. Knock is the equivalent of Renfield from Dracula's story. Now, he's gone mad. He's back home and he's gone mad, and wife lady is still having crazy dreams and such, and she's like being psychologically connected to by the Count and his vampire mysticism ways. And oh no, what's gonna happen next? And they're like, he keeps biting me. I don't want to get my blood sucked out. This isn't fun at all. Ugh. And then, it's like, just like in the story, the vampire Count, he made this contract happen because he wants to own up a large swath of land in the big inhabited city, and he wants all the soil and earth from his homeland placed into boxes, transported on ship, and sent, to the new housing area where he has lots of fresh people to feed on. Because, as he's pointed out, all the people in his homeland have gotten wise to his vampire tricks and sneakiness, and they have all their rituals and faith and sanctified earth and such that keeps him at bay. They got loads of crosses everywhere. They got rituals to stop the vampires. They got everything. And he's like, oh, I can't trick these people anymore. I gotta go somewhere new. Yes, a new city with new rubes to trick and deceive and bite. He's like, okay. Meanwhile, on board the boat, everything's gone to hell because the ship captain thinks that people are his crew have become infected with the plague and they're getting bitten and dying off, and he has to throw everyone out to be buried at sea. And he's like, oh, there's no one living on this ship anymore. He's like, I'm the last one. Well, I might as well go up into the cargo hold and see what that creepy box is all about. And he's like, oh shit, there's a vampire in there. And he's like, oh no. And he's like biting and such, and like, oh no. Now there's no one on board, no living people on board the ship anymore, just lots and lots of rats. Infected with the plague, I should add. And rather than coming into port, that big ship crashes right in there and lets all the rats out to spread plague into the city. Oh goody, a pandemic. Oh my. We haven't seen that in a while now, have we? Mr. Knock is locked up in the insane asylum because he is going insane and eating all the animals and biting heads off of sheeps and birds and things, and he just starts biting people, and he's like, oh, you're mad. And the doctors are at a loss for what to do with the lady who's gone crazy. And she's like, I've had these terrible dreams ever since I was a little child. Oh, and I wished for this angel to be my friend because I was so lonely. But then I realized that was a bad idea because it's a bad angel demon thingy. And like, so are you saying somehow during your youth you were connected to the Count? Like, you've never met before. Like, okay, whatever. Like, well, maybe she's just different, she's like psychic or something. Like, okay, whatever. And later on in the film, a character mentions, in ancient times you would be, held on a pedestal as some sort of oracle or a wise priestess or something. But now in this day, everyone just calls you crazy. And like, isn't that the story of my life, says the lady. And like, oh no. And everything's going crazy because there's going to be the plague spreading around town with all the rats. There's corpses and feces and dead animals and dead people all lining these streets. It's a absolute bedlam. People are going insane. And there's all sorts of anarchy. And let's talk to this other doctor. He's kind of weird, though. Why? Well, he's a wizard alchemist guy. He thinks he was, discredited from medical science because he thought magic's real. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe he knows something. He's like, hi, I'm the stand-in for Van Helsing. I know all about alchemy and magic stuffs. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty much preposterous, says the other guy. And he's like, you know what? No psychological explanation for any of this stuff, no medical explanation. Maybe the lady's just gone crazy or something. And he's like, no, I'm pretty sure she's possessed by that evil Count or something. He's like, what is the Count's evil plan? Well, he wants to, move into this new city, bite as much people as he wants, spread a plague, absolute hell on earth sort of thing. I'm like, oh, okay. He's kind of a bad guy, isn't he? Yeah. And the Count, he's just like, I finally got here. Oh, and now, you, lady, you're my favorite one I want to play with. And he's like, huh? Like, oh, yeah. Like, you remember all those times you were wishing to speak to an angel as your best friend? Well, that was me the whole time. It was me. And like, oh, shit. I'm like, what? Like, okay, she just is psychic and such, and she was best friends. And apparently this counts as some sort of infidelity that they did when they were younger. What? Before she actually met her current husband? Like, he does get back to her eventually, and they're like, this is weird. We're all going insane, aren't we? Like, people are burning up the corpses and setting them on fire because we can't have them coming back as vampires, and entire families of people are dying, and this is all terrible. Like, well, I have a plan to fix this, says the crazy wizard doctor. Like, let's go to the vampire's, his new abode, his place where he keeps all his soil and earth and such, and let's just burn it and sanctify it and make it like unsuitable for him to retreat to. Like, then we'll get rid of his hideout, where he returns, when the daylight comes. If he's got nowhere to hide during daylight time, he'll die from the sunlight. You're like, actually, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, but how are we going to make him lose track of time? Well, we'll make him fuck your wife. You're like, excuse me, you want you to do what to my wife? You're like, yeah, well, she's going to be the sacrifice, you see. She is already, attracting the man, and he's, she's a very lovely lady with psychic bond, and the Count, he's all down for her, so the two of them are just going to fuck all night till the morning light. And like, sir, that is my wife you're speaking about. And he's like, no, it's fine. I'm a good doctor. I know what I'm doing. Look, it'll work out fine. He's like, oh, I can't stand this. Oh, he runs back to his house, and he's like, yeah, the two of them are basically dead on the bed because they were up all night embracing because, yeah, but they got nowhere to go come the daylight, so the sun just straight up kills the vampire, because that's what vampires do when they're in the sunlight. Yeah, pretty much vampire lore right there. Yeah, but yeah, a pretty grim sacrifice, all things considered. I should also mention Willem Dafoe as the crazy wizard doctor. Okay, that's good casting. My. And that's pretty much the end of the film. To recap, and I'm like, yeah, it's a wild film. And what a wild series of events this has been. Werewolf movies and vampire movies, and it's long past Halloween. It's in January, the month that supposedly is infamous for having no good quality movies in it, supposedly. Well, it feels a bit subjective, I should think, but yep, that's that's pretty much the gist of it. Like, I really do like these horror movies, and it's funny, we couldn't really get the ball rolling on a new Universal Pictures cinematic universe, the Universal Horror Monsters. Look, these remakes aren't really all that bad. I mean, people criticize The Mummy for some reason, and I will admit that one was pretty weak. That remake with Tom Cruise, and the new Mummy movie, where it's a lady mummy, and she wants to find Tom Cruise, because I guess this is a gender reversed version of the previous film, and she's like, you're my reanimated, resurrected lover. You've been reincarnated. And the guy's like, what? Why is that dead lady talking to me? And he's like, also, how did I survive that plane crash? Like, well, yeah, it's a weird movie, but yeah, okay, it had its flaws, I will admit, but maybe it was just going too heavy on all the setting up for sequels and setting up for other movies, because in that movie, this is a spoiler for yet another movie, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are also in that film of the remake of The Mummy. And he's like, I'm the head of this super secret paranormal investigation team. We go looking for all the spooky things in the world. And by all the spooky things, I mean, of course, all the Universal horror movie monsters, which are totally real, including myself. I am Dr. Jekyll. All I have to do is drink this potion, and soon I'll become Mr. Hyde, a supervillain. And I'm like, bro, this is too much for me. And like, no, look at all these corpses we have in the laboratory. It's total setup for all the movies that are about to come. They're never going to come. They're never going to happen. This movie is basically dead on arrival. I'm sorry, but you're not getting a sequel. You're not getting spin-offs. You're getting nothing. So let's recap. The Mummy has been remade. The Invisible Man was remade and done very good. Much better than the other movie, I should think. The Wolfman Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty solid. Nosferatu, basically Dracula. Yeah, it's all really good. It's really coming together. No Frankenstein though, or maybe there was a Frankenstein movie a few years ago, but I'm sorry I didn't make it to see that one. Sorry. But what about the creature from the Black Lagoon? That one always seems to get overlooked. Imagine a modern remake of the creature from the Black Lagoon. That'd be pretty cool, except in many ways it already kind of has happened, hasn't it? He pretty much got his own series, or like he joined up with Hellboy in that film. Like, that's not even really a Universal Horror Movies monster. It's not even Universal Pictures. It's a comic book based on Dark Horse. Oh, it's getting late. But yeah, that's actually a comic book and not the creature from the Black Lagoon, just a creature very similar to it. And also there's that movie The Shape of Water, which I didn't get around to seeing, but I should, because it's basically, a remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon. Creature from the Black Lagoon. And, apparently there's all this... well, of course, people are going to react with... the people of the time will react with hysteria and disgust at the concept of race mixing. And, of course, they'll be no more sympathetic to the idea of a woman getting along with a fish man. So that's pretty wild when you think about it. Oh, my. Like, the creature from the Black Lagoon. He grabs a woman in his big fishy claw arms and he just carries her off. And like, yeah. Cliches like that. Oh, man. So many good horror movies. So many good movies. So many bad ones, though. I wasn't really... I actually did have... I liked Wicked. That was okay, but not looking forward to some of the Disney productions, though. Moana 2 has been critically panned for being nothing more than just a TV pilot. A TV show that might not even happen. And Mufasa the Lion King is a prequel to the live-action Lion King, which shouldn't really be called live-action because that's all CGI critters, and otherwise known as the lifeless version, ironically, because they say it's live-action, but no, they're all very lifeless CGI creations, even though they are photorealistic. And supposedly this version of the story features this retconning that Mufasa wasn't even the real king. It's just a found family sort of situation, which left-wing people seem to really double down on for some reason. Maybe they have daddy issues and family issues or something. I'm going to say it simply because it could be the truth. Prove me wrong. Okay. But yeah, like, that's kind of defeating the whole purpose. Like, there used to be this concept of lineage and the kings and royalty and such, which Mufasa talked about. Like, our ancestors are in the stars, you see. Each one of those stars is the soul of a king who once lived, and they were great people, I assure you. He's like, well, according to this sequel movie, you aren't really a king, or at least you're the first in line. You don't have any ancestors. And like, well, fuck me then. And what else? Marvel movies. I've completely jumped off the bandwagon. I've just really fallen off the cart. Like, I used to be pretty diligent when watching all those movies, but got really repetitive and very, very left-leaning. I know people are going to say politics this and politics that, but I don't know. Some of this stuff, they get really heavy with the left stuff. And it doesn't help that it's no longer accessible to the public to watch a movie in theaters or watch it on streaming. You have to watch a mini-series, essentially, on one of Disney's proprietary websites, streaming websites like Disney Plus or such. So I can't really watch The Mandalorian on television. I can't watch WandaVision on television. I have to watch it through their streaming sites. I can't watch the Hawkeye TV series because that's also exclusive. I can't watch what is it? What is it? What's the name? The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that sort of spin off to Captain America. That was also another one that was exclusive to the streaming services, and therefore you can't watch it in theaters or on television or anything like that. No. I never really even got into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., even though it's supposedly closer in canon. I did watch the Netflix TV series, but that was I think a very low-key sort of connection, I should think. And there's another series, Loki, the TV series. Moon Knight, the TV series. Cloak and Dagger was another one. But all these series, they're not on television. They're all on their exclusive internet, whatever, streaming services. And, like, I could have just bought a movie ticket and watched it in one go, but no, you had to make these things difficult and not convenient for the people to watch. And of course, there's also She-Hulk is in the same situation, except that one was critically panned for being really weird. Everyone's heard of this infamous scene where they just start twerking together for some reason. So yeah, I'm not really invested on the Thunderbolts movie. I didn't see the sequel to Black Panther, and I didn't see the Eternals and such, and like, it's all just too much. A lot of stuff a lot of these Marvel movies I just skipped over, and as critics have pointed out previously, it's getting really damn formulaic, and criticizing the people who are into it as well. Like, there's this meme going around. This one viewer, he's going crazy because how can I possibly appreciate this movie, Schindler's List, without constant quips and jokes and references like they do in the Marvel movies? How am I supposed to enjoy this? And the crazy guy's like, oh no. And I just, I don't know, that's just not very appealing. Like, not just the overly formulaicness of it all, but they made it inconvenient to watch it all. Like, they're not making it easy to experience the whole cinematic universe. Like, it'd be one thing to watch all the movies, that's one thing, but they also want the streaming services and the miniseries. All those miniseries that are exclusive to their proprietary streaming services, which is disconnected from the Netflix Marvel's series. Like, there was Jessica Jones and Daredevil and Luke Cage and Iron Fist, but that's just not in the same degree of canonness, I suppose, because there's going to be a new Daredevil movie coming out, and it's going to retcon things potentially, maybe. And every time the characters in that Netflix series, they act like they're in the same universe, but they can only kind of reference it. No one ever calls him the Hulk. They just say the big green guy. And no one ever says Thor. They just say that Asgardian with the lightning powers. Like, chances are no one would even say Spider-Man, even though they're supposedly living in the same city. And supposedly some of those people are actually his friends that they've met before, and okay, whatever. I'm not even going to mention the Inhumans. That was a tricky one. They actually put the pilot episodes in theaters, the first two. I'm like, because they wanted it to be viewed in IMAX, because that's a gimmick, I guess. But how is that practical at all? Nobody, like, who has an IMAX theater at home? That's not how that works. Like, oh my goodness. Marvel movies. I used to be such a big fan, And it always previously it always struck me as really hipsterish when people say, "Oh, they're all done with it. It's all formulaic. Why won't they get over it? Why can't they just get over all these superhero movies?" And like, well, that bugged me because I'm like, dude, I'm just enjoying what I'm enjoying, but wasn't good enough for the public. Just wasn't good enough for the public. Like, oh man. Well, my opinion has soured because, like I said before, they made it inconvenient. I'm really rambling on to myself over and over again while drinking weird drinks. Yeah, if they made more horror movies like this, more remakes of the horror movies, I'd be down for it. I would really be on board with it. Like, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein. Maybe even just do a straight up remake of, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I mean, like, he gets referenced in the other Universal horror movies, but he's not really necessarily, like, in them as a solo feature. Creature of the Black Lagoon is constantly ignored. Invisible Man was pretty good, but I'm not sure if there's going to be any sequels to that one. Oh my, it's getting late. Maybe we'll just call this video there.